Hi, John.
Hi.
How's it going?
It's all right.
Thank you so much for coming down and doing this. I'm very happy that you're here. I think this is going to be a great episode. So for the sake of everybody that's going to listen, just introduce yourself and who you are and what you do.
Yeah, I'm John Chillingworth. I used to be the chief engineer of the QE2 here in Dubai. And I currently work with shipping companies around the world doing specialist surveys and hazardous removal projects, in addition to advice on air quality management on ships.
Fantastic. When was it that you decided that you wanted a life at sea?
At a very early age, really, because my father was with Cunard. I was brought up in Liverpool in the 50s and 60s. And my grandmother was a nationalised American. So I first went to New York at the age of 5 on Cunard's ship. And if you can imagine Liverpool post-war, it was still getting its act together. You know, there's still lots of bombed out houses in Liverpool. And the ship was obviously a totally different lifestyle. And then you go to New York, and again, a totally different lifestyle with a better quality of life. So that obviously planted a seed for me. And then when I was 9, I went back to New York for another 3 months. So progressively, I thought that I'd like to go away to sea.
How long did it take to make that journey at that time?
On those ships, it was 6 days from Liverpool to New York.
And what was those ships? What did these ships look like?
They were the classic style with a round funnel, black hull. They were the Sylvania, Corinthia, Saxonia, Ivernia. And then I came back from New York the second time on the Queen Mary.
And how many people could you get on these ships?
About 600 passengers.
Okay.
The Queen Mary is about 2,000.
And what was your first job on a ship? How did you get from, school to ship?
Well, Cunard and lots of other shipping companies do cadetships, which are an apprenticeship. And that involves having 2 years at college studying marine engineering or navigation if you're doing the navigation route. And then you have 1 year at sea. And then you go back to college for another year. So it's a 4-year apprenticeship, basically. And then you come out as a junior officer on the ships.
And what constitutes as marine engineering?
Well, marine engineering is mechanical engineering, but with a marine bias, because obviously there's unique technology associated with ships and the operation of ships, as opposed to mechanical engineering ashore.
And so, what was the size of the first ship that you actually got on?
It was a sister ship of the first ship I went across to New York on.
Okay.
The Franconia, which used to be the Ivernia. And it was cruising out of New York to Bermuda. It'd have 3 days a week in Bermuda and 1 day in New York. So I flew out there the first time on Caledonia Airways to Bermuda. And the first shock was going down into the engine room.
Yeah.
Because it was like 45 degrees C. They used to have a big stainless steel bucket of ice water on the platform, and everybody was drinking that, and you had to take salt tablets. So that was a bit of a shock, but it was basically work hard, play hard scenario.
Yeah.
And it was great.
And how old were you at the time?
I was 18 then.
What was it like leaving? Because life is very different now than it was and sort of back then. What was it like to just leave home? Because there's no phones back then. There's no internet. There's no call your mum every day.
No, it's actually writing letters and you get a reply 3 weeks later. No, I couldn't wait to get away from Liverpool, to be honest with you. I mean, I like Liverpool, but no, growing up and being 17, you want to experience other things, so I couldn't wait to get away.
Do you think that playing that kind of transatlantic crossing all the time played a big part in that, where...
Oh, yeah, definitely.
No disrespect to Liverpool or England, but compared to possibly New York at that time, it's a big juxtaposition on...
Oh, yeah. One of the things, they used to call them Cunard Yanks in Liverpool, all the crews from the transatlantic liners, they would bring all the stuff back from New York, including music, obviously. But the standard of living was far greater in the States. You know, they had big fridges, they had big TVs with, you know, more than 2 channels and that kind of thing. Yeah.
What sort of music were you into?
I suppose the Beatles, Rolling Stones, all that kind of thing. Yeah.
Must have been awesome at that time when these bands were coming through.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. Oh, I saw the Beatles in the Liverpool Town Hall in 1964, yeah.
Was that before they blew up?
They were getting popular then, yeah.
Oh, that must have been awesome.
Yeah.
So the engine room. Now, you were invited me down to the QE2 last week, and I feel very grateful for, especially going in the engine room, because I was an engineer by trade when I left school. And I think that most people's, I think that most people's interpretation of an engine is when they lift up their car bonnet and they see sort of 4x3 and that's about the size of it. You know, describe how big the engine room of the QE2 actually is. Look at your face.
Well, the ship now is diesel electric. Mm-hmm. It used to be steam, but as a diesel electric plant, the space that we had when it was a steamship is quite crowded now, and you've got 9, the equivalent of double-decker buses, which are the engines that drive generators, which then drive the propulsion motors for the prop shafts and supply electricity to the rest of the ship. So size-wise, it's 9 double-decker buses plus 2 propulsion motors, which I suppose are like half a double-decker bus each, and then 200 feet of prop shafts.
I mean, it was, the 200-foot prop shaft, yeah?
Yeah.
I think that one of the things that I found sort of processing afterwards, I think we went down 4 sets of ladders.
Yeah.
We went through about 5 doors. And
all of watertight doors.
And all of it's the engine. Yeah, and the watertight doors, I was going to ask, you know, those things seal automatically, don't they?
They can do it remotely, yeah.
And, you know, if the ship were to get into trouble, you know, how does it work with, I suppose, the flooding situation? You said they had a double hull.
Well, we've got tanks all the way around the ship, which is effectively giving you a double hull. If you're hitting the thing, it would just penetrate a tank as opposed to coming to the inside the ship. But the QE2 is a 3-compartment ship, so you'd have to flood 3 compartments before she'd sink. But the operation of the watertight door, if we were going across the Atlantic, we were in the ice fields, we'd be on ice standby, so all the watertight doors would be shut. And the same with if we were in thick fog, which is quite normal in a transatlantic, we'd have the watertight doors shut.
And what constitutes as ice standby?
Ice standby is when you're likely to hit bits of icebergs.
Okay. Well, I think when you think ship, QE2, iceberg, you know, and a lot of people think Titanic.
Yeah. Well, we're on the same route, of course. You know, it's called the Great Circle. So you're up by Newfoundland, Cape Race, then down Greenland. And the ice fields come down from April, which is when the Titanic sank. April through to August, the ice fields come further south into the shipping lanes.
Why do you need to take that route post-Titanic?
Because it's the quickest route.
It's the quickest.
You're doing it in 5 days. So you need to be doing 28.5 knots on that route.
And how fast is the QE2?
We'd service speed is 28.5, and on the acceptance trials after re-engineering, I did up to 34.
And I think for the non-sort of seafaring people, I asked you this question last week, when people get confused between knots and miles an hour, like what is 1 knot per 1 mile an hour?
I can't remember exactly, but it's like,
there you go.
It's about 1.3, isn't it, I think?
Okay. Because again, I think people don't really know. People go, does 20 knots. You know, I have no idea what that
Well, 34
means.
knots is nearly 40 miles an hour.
So even after the Titanic, they kept the same route just due to speed and efficiency.
Yeah.
Were there any changes to the way ships were built after what happened with the Titanic?
Well, yeah,
Titanic was 1914?
1912.
1912.
Yeah. Well, again, they started to put tanks around the ship and increase the number of lifeboats.
Did you ever hit an iceberg?
Hit growlers. A growler is a small bit of iceberg. So if you're going along at 28.5 knots, you'd go along and then maybe go like that and carry on. Hopefully it doesn't hit the propeller.
What was one of the worst situations you've ever been in, sort of?
Only one.
Okay, top 5. Do you know what I mean? Give me the top 5.
The first one when I was a cadet, it was in 1972. And it was really played down. This was before cameras and videos and what have you. We'd left New York 2 days out, and a hurricane forms around the ship. So we're in the eye of the hurricane. And it's kind of a surreal feeling because it's calm in the eye.
Mm-hmm.
And you're on the ship, and all you can see is a swirl of wind and clouds going round. And up above it would be clear blue sky. So we were in it for a day, and then we were being taken too far off course.
A day?
A day, yeah.
Sorry.
So
you say that so nonchalantly, like, we're in it for a day, and it's like, I wouldn't want to be in it for an hour,
yeah. You know. So they tried to push through the inner bands, but for some reason, the old man, you got the inner bands going around like that. He hit it at a right angle. So all these inner bands pushed down the side of the ship, and she went over 45 degrees. And it's very hard to imagine what it is like 45 degrees, but all the furniture and looking out the port. I was in my bed. It was 7:30 in the morning, so I was in my bunk, and all I could see in the porthole was sea. But the feeling was, if she kept on going, she would have capsized. And in reality, the design heel is most probably about 55 degrees, and she would have capsized.
And so it was going 45, or
went
once?
This is just one. Once was enough. 45.
My experience of capsizing ships is watching American movies. Do you know what I mean? Where, you know.
No, that's just when you're rolling like that.
Yeah.
You must probably go over like 10 degrees at the most when you're going along. But no, she went over and then she came back up and then went a bit that way. And then she was pushed back into the eye. And then I think once the captain had changed his underpants, he figured out the right way of going through the inner bands, which was to hit the inner bands head on. And then we pushed our way through the hurricane. And then after that, we had the bomb scare, which was a bit of a non-event, but it meant 3 bomb disposal experts being parachuted out to the ship. That was in the May. So we had the hurricane, and then the next month we had the bomb threat.
Everything happens in threes. So.
Yeah. So I suppose the interesting part of that aftermath of the bomb threat was we always carried a bomb disposal expert on the ship, and all the baggage was x-rayed and things like that.
So where was the ship positioned to land? As in, how far away from each side was it when you have the hurricane?
About a mile each side.
Okay.
Maybe 2 miles. No, 2 miles each side.
So
it was about a 4 mile diameter, the eye.
No, I mean, so how far were you from the UK or the States?
Oh, we were in the middle.
So if it goes over...
Yeah. No, we were in the middle Atlantic, so it would have been, everybody would be dead.
What?
Because you couldn't launch the boats, could you? You're upside down.
I mean, I suppose, is it that clear cut? Was it that? Let me ask you a question. Is it that clear cut now? So then it goes over.
Yeah.
That's it. You know, there is no real chance. Anyone that gets out of it is considered to be super lucky.
If you considered the Poseidon adventure, and I just told you it's double hull, including the bottom, if there's anyone in an air pocket, there's no way anyone's going to get to them. So, yeah. But it was played down. Everyone got a certificate at the end of the trip. But, it was really played down. But I think
they got a certificate?
Yeah. But I think it was most probably the closest she's ever been come to.
What was on the certificate?
That you survived one of the largest hurricanes ever experienced on the transatlantic.
I don't know how to process that.
Yeah.
Like, here's an official reminder of one of the scariest moments of your life.
Yeah.
Do they still do that?
Certificates.
Yeah, do you get a certificate?
Yeah, if you have a
nearly
bad
die?
storm, yeah. It's always a memento, you know. And then in 74, we were trapped in the Bermuda Triangle for 3 weeks with no power
Yeah.
because someone put something in the wrong hole.
Expand on that. Not the second part.
Well, no, it's important, putting it in the wrong hole.
But what happened? Like,
Well, we didn't know until after we obviously investigated it all, but we got oil in the feed water of the boilers.
right.
At the time, we didn't figure out how it was getting there. But after, I think it was about 3 or 4 days of opening pipes and what have you, we found out that it was coming from one of the fuel pumps. And it's easy in hindsight. They should have analysed what was done 24 hours before we started seeing the oil in the feed water. But the oil pump was overhauled, and on the oil pump, there was a steam jacket, and you had 2 connections. One was an oil pressure gauge, and the other was a steam condensate drain. And what happened was the mechanic switched them over. So oil was going into the condensate line. There was no pressure on the pressure gauge, but they thought, oh, it must be the pressure gauge that's wrong. Then about 50 tons of fuel oil went into the feed water. So we had passengers on board, and we had to get a cruise ship come out from Bermuda. They offloaded their passengers, came out and took our passengers back to Bermuda. And then we had to spend 3 weeks on a dead ship fixing everything.
Was this when the Bermuda Triangle was the Bermuda Triangle?
But it still is,
this
isn't it?
gigantic mystery. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? How did you feel at the time? Did you think...
I was tired.
do
I was
love-
working.
I do love
We
you,
were doing
John.
6 on, 6 off.
You know what I'm
And it was hot.
I'm
And smelly.
yes, hot, smelly, and I was tired.
Yeah.
But did you? But when you approach something like the Bermuda Triangle, and I'm not trying to, let's say, sensationalize the podcast by saying Bermuda Triangle, but people look at the Bermuda Triangle as this mystical thing
Yeah.
where you somehow a plane goes into it and disappears, and a whole ship has disappeared. Like when you're approaching the Bermuda Triangle, was there like an air of, we don't know what this weird, we're about to sail through this weird thing, whether you believe in it or not, and then when you're in it, the whole ship breaks down. Was there a moment where you thought, oh, hello, like,
Not really.
no?
The other thing was, it was actually April 1st it happened. So you couldn't make it up, could you,
Someone's
really?
having a laugh.
Yeah.
Wow. What is your opinion of the Bermuda Triangle then, just to close this off?
It's just a myth.
A complete myth.
Yeah.
You've never known, seen, or anything that's come through it?
No.
No. All right, fair enough. What is life at sea like for you back then on the ship?
It was great.
Yeah?
You're being paid to live a millionaire lifestyle, really. You're in a lap of luxury, good food, plenty of entertainment, socialising.
Mm.
Yeah, it was good.
And how was the social aspect of it all? Non-stop partying?
It was when I was younger.
Yeah.
Yeah, the crew and the officers, it was a good team. So there was a lot of interdepartmental mixing. Hotel officers would have cabin parties, and everyone would go to that. Engineers do the same, and the mates. So it was very social.
And there was another, I suppose, there was another very serious incident that took place when you were on the QE2, which was the Falklands War.
Yeah.
And just explain what happened with the QE2 and yourself in that process.
Well, it was, I think it was about May 3rd, 1982. The government requisitioned the ship. And the government had already requisitioned the Canberra, which was a cruise ship with P&O, and several other vessels, container ships, trawlers, and they'd been sent down to the South Atlantic. But things were kicking off, and they wanted more troops down there. So they wanted QE2 as a troop ship, and we took 3,500 troops down there. We put helicopter decks on the foredeck and the back deck, which was done in about a week. There was an air of excitement, but then I remember watching the stores being brought on the ship, and there was 5-gallon boxes of blood coming on. So you're thinking, okay, we're taking this down as supplies for the troops down in the Falklands. And then we set sail, and we had to limp out of Southampton because we were only on one boiler. But they had 8 tugs tow us out because we had to leave on time. It had to be 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And then we went off to the back of the Isle of Wight and went to anchor while we fixed the problem. And then we got the other 2 boilers back on and went down to Ascension.
So they towed out already a broken ship.
Yeah.
Now, very quickly, just for context, the Falklands was the war between
Argentina
and England.
Yeah.
Yes.
Over the...
I don't want to get this wrong, but I have
over the Falkland Islands. Argentina made a play on taking over South Georgia and the Falklands. And Britain didn't want it to happen, so... Fortunately, we won. I think it was an unnecessary war and a tragic loss of life on both sides. And ironically, we couldn't stage that war again. The Navy and the armed forces have been decimated. I mean, we've got enough troops to fill a football stadium.
Which is bizarre for a country like the UK.
As an island nation, it's insane.
Why did they do this? Why did that happen? They depleted the UK depleted the military spending, which depleted the numbers and everything.
Yeah. In fairness, there's a lot of money wasted with MOD. I know when it comes to building and repairing ships in the Royal Navy, they're charged twice as much as a commercial ship would be because the MOD are prepared to pay it. It's stupid, really. So
it's almost like those sort of cliched myths where suddenly a hammer costs £100 instead of £10.
Yeah. So there needs to be a lot of cost savings, but they did it the wrong way. Instead of reducing the size of the fleet, they should have possibly given it out to the commercial sector to do the purchasing and repairs.
I wanted to just circle back to the Falklands bit, but how did you feel then going from a commercial liner where you are creating a great experience crossing the Atlantic and being part of that to suddenly being asked to go into a active war zone?
I was kind of cool with it because it was another adventure, something different. We were all given flash hoods. Flash hoods are like a balaclava you stick over your head if there's a fire. You put that on. And we had the inflatable life jacket packets. And I had my escape kit, Mars bars and nuts and supplies like that.
And did you feel, as you were getting closer to it, that it was kind of ramping up the anxiety?
Well, yeah, because we were starting to lose ships. So we knew that there was... I mean, we saw Canberra. They had Exocet missiles firing at Bomb Alley in the Falklands.
Bomb Alley?
Yeah. It was near Stanley. The Falklands are 2 islands. One's Port Stanley and one's South Georgia. So we only went to South Georgia. But Canberra was in the main part of the Falklands. And that's where the Argentinian aircraft were bombing.
Was there any near misses?
Oh, yeah. For them, for Canberra.
For you?
Oh, not for us, no.
Okay.
The government aren't going to risk the pride of the British Navy if they didn't have to. So that's why we transferred all the troops over to Canberra. And then Canberra, was a bit older than QE2 and not as well known in the global scene.
I don't know, I might get in trouble there, but it's the nature of my podcast. Do you think there was an element of PR around sending the QE2? Like you said, they can't risk anything going wrong. Was it like in goes the big flagship unit?
Possibly, but in practicalities, it was just to get the troops down there. How do you get 3,500 troops down there quickly?
Fair enough. Fair enough. So this all happened before the age of 30, correct?
Yeah.
Because at 31, you became chief engineer,
Yeah.
which was quite early, was it not? Based on the other chief engineers?
Well, yeah, the normal age would be 50 or 60 for a senior chief. And the other thing is, in those days, there weren't that many cruise ships, so there were a lot of senior people in Cunard. For example, in the deck department, which is 9, you'd have at least 7 master's tickets.
Mm-hmm.
So effectively 7 captains. And in the engineering department, we'd have 7 or 8 chief's licenses. But the Falklands kind of identified issues with the ship because she wasn't in a great condition.
Mm-hmm.
Because the government had it, there was actually questions raised in Parliament about it.
Okay.
So they needed the ship cleaned up. And I suppose my predecessors were reactive. And I suppose I'm proactive.
In what way?
You need to have plan A, plan B, plan C if something goes wrong. And I was quite good at that.
And they didn't?
They were old school. And I was actually thinking about it last night. Have you ever had your brain analysed?
No, sorry.
No,
I shouldn't laugh. That just came out of nowhere. So I have not had my brain analysed.
Cunard was pretty good with management training. And senior officers, like the 4 stripers, would go on a seminar.
Mm-hmm.
And on this one particular occasion, the executive vice president had a pal who was a management consultant. And they analysed everyone's brain. And basically, they give you like 20 questions.
Mm-hmm.
Depending on how you answer it, they can plot out how your brain works.
Okay.
My brain is an all-round brain with a slight deviation to the upper left.
Okay.
If you were an arty type, you'd be upper right. They're the quadrants of the brain that activate technical and art. My contemporaries were just totally upper left. So I suppose I had a better concept of the big picture,
Mm-hmm.
which was important because I suppose my predecessors were only interested in the engine room. They weren't particularly bothered about the hotel side.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the hotel side of the ship that pays the wages, really.
Yeah.
So they wanted an emphasis on support of the hotel. Plus, I knew the ship inside out because I was trained on it. And ironically, I suppose 70% of the engineering team, when I went chief, were the ones that trained me from when I was an apprentice.
How did that transition work for you? Was it smooth, or were there people that were like...
You would think, yeah, what's he doing? No, actually, it was all very good. No, they understood why I was there. And I'm only as good as the people that are working with me.
Mm-hmm.
So as long as you treat people right and you manage them and you support them, they like it and you get the job done. So we cleaned the ship up, made it more reliable, and then they went for re-engineering to save fuel.
I think there must be a great sense of responsibility when you've got X amount of passengers on there leading a big team and dealing with something of that size in an engineering perspective, because I would hazard a guess that nothing ever ran smoothly ever.
No.
Yeah.
In fact, 3 of my predecessors were all retired medical, 2 with nervous breakdowns and 1 with a heart attack. But I think I mentioned to the other day, the worse it gets, the better I like it sometimes.
Oh, yeah, you mentioned this.
You know, you get more of a kick after solving major problems as opposed to rinky-dink issues. And they tend to irritate me even more, the small stuff. But the big stuff, I just calm straight down.
What were some of the major problems? I think I asked you, actually, what was the biggest thing that actually happened that the guests never knew about, but you were kind of, this could be close, you know what I mean?
Well, they all end up knowing about it because there's a galley telegraph. People talk on a ship, so it eventually gets round.
No, the guests.
No, but they tell their guests.
Oh, they tell the guests?
You know, you got waiters at a table. You know, you're having chit-chat.
What's the word? Oh, there's a fire downstairs earlier on.
Yeah, they all know. Yeah. Actually, I think I told you about the time when the switchboard blew up in the control room. I forgot to mention that 3 hours before that happened, we had 100 press on board. They were in the control room. So when that happened, we had to regroup and what have you. So I stopped all communications outside the ship. I blocked off the radio room until I could find out what had happened, what we were going to do about it. Then I could tell head office before it was in the news. Yeah.
Now, you have had a long-standing, would you say, love affair or labour of love with this particular vessel?
I suppose it's a passion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And because you tried to buy it.
Yeah, well, I was working with Dubai World in 2007 to 2009 for when the ship came over here as a floating hotel.
Mm-hmm.
And then we had the financial crash in 2008. So she was just left lying in Dubai for about 4 years. But around about 2012, I was hearing stories that they were looking at maybe scrapping her.
Mm-hmm.
So at that time, I thought, well, okay, let's try and get her into London. Originally, it was going to be Liverpool, but all the investors that I was talking to wanted London because obviously higher return on investment.
Yeah.
So we spent a year on that, Port of London Authority, seeing that she could get through the Thames Barrier. She was going to be positioned opposite the O2 Arena underneath the cable car. Boris Johnson, who was mayor at the time, he was all up for it, wrote a letter. George Osborne, the mayor of Newham. And we had investors. And I approached Dubai World. And they were kind of keen on it. But unfortunately, certain people didn't want it to happen. Mm-hmm. And it fell apart.
And so now the ship is here in Dubai, and it's in an area being mass developed.
Yeah,
which because I came down there and and I think I'll be honest with you, I didn't really know what to expect. I know it's been here for a long time. My only real sort of thought pattern with the QE2 post, its historical elements, but more of its Dubai elements, is that it is a hotel. It once had a nightclub, there in 2019, and its hull and everything like this. And I remember I came to sort of see you, and I felt, from my own perspective, I felt that it could have been thematically better. Do you know what I mean? I wanted to ask you, if you'd bought it, what would you have done with it?
She would have been a 400-room hotel in London. We would have tried to operate it as if she was a ship with entertainment. You go on the QE2 at the moment, there's no entertainment. You go into a hotel in Dubai, there's always a Filipino trio somewhere, but we haven't got that at the moment. They ripped out too much of the heritage, in my opinion, but that was because when they did it in 2017, there was nobody from the ship's history to advise them.
Yeah,
which is unfortunate.
Yeah, I mean, I've worked in hotels long enough. I get it. I totally understand. You keep the shell, and then you create something very interesting inside. I think it's a little bit of a shame because it lacks a little bit of its.
Well, it's the heritage that's the draw, and it can be resurrected. And I think the problem is because the whole area is under development at the moment. It's going to be like a miniature Palm with villas and everything else. It'll become a destination, and then they'll reinvest money and resources to make it an entertainment centre. Yeah.
I think one thing I wanted to highlight for anybody that doesn't understand your history with this particular ship is that when you walk into, because I'd never been, so when you walk through the doors, there is an enormous area of paraphernalia. Books, and there's the bell and models, and it's like a little mini museum. And sort of front and center in a display case is your cap.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
And how old is that cap? Like,
well, it's Yeah, it's 42 years old. Yeah.
Oh, that's madness.
And my uniform's in the little museum on the ship. And after you left, I found out someone had stole it for the night. But they'd put it back the next morning. So it's obviously an officer and a gentleman moment someone had with my jacket.
Still being used. You know what I mean? Still getting some use out of it.
Yeah.
How many different countries did you go to then on this ship?
Try and say how many countries I didn't go to would be easier, I think. Virtually everywhere. I can't think of a place we haven't been.
What was your favourite?
I suppose New York was always a favourite. Maybe not so much now because I lived in the States, but certainly Hong Kong, Singapore, Sydney. I like India, Mumbai, Bali.
Mm-hmm.
I liked Bali the first time we went there, 1975, because all the women were topless.
I see.
But in an
Which is a cultural thing.
It is,
what I mean?
and you know,
Not
a lot of the tourists were American. But you know, the world's changed a lot in 50 years. The places have become somewhat similar to other places. You know, they have the same shops.
Well, I wanted to ask how sort of you. So, what year did you leave Liverpool when you were 18? What year is that?
1971.
1971. And you are the very young age of 73, correct?
Yeah.
And you've been all around the world on multiple occasions. So how much has the world changed?
Make an example. Hong Kong, fascinating place. And the first time we were there 5 days. So a lot of the passengers go off to Beijing on the tours. But it's a good chance for us to do maintenance.
Mm-hmm.
And we'd have a cleaning gang doing the tank tops in the engine room. And I remember at Smoke Out, which is coffee break, seeing 10 or 15 of the Chinese cleaners. You know, they're in their squat Chinese position.
Mm.
And they've got their arms wrapped and they're taking heroin.
Okay.
They were being paid in heroin.
They're being paid in heroin.
Yeah, that's 1975. That's just one example. I think it was a rare event. But Hong Kong, you know, the harbour was a constant movement of junks and ships coming in and out. It was a great place to buy things.
Mm-hmm.
It was cheap. Similar to Singapore. And Singapore had a lot of character. The only place in Singapore now which is like the original Singapore, is Little India.
Mm-hmm.
But there's places like Boogie Street in Singapore, which was a good run ashore for the crew.
Mm-hmm.
Boogie Street was where the transvestites used to hang out.
Mm-hmm.
But they were a good laugh, you know, until some of the crew had too much to drink and they didn't know who they were going with. Sydney, great place. But I suppose immigration also affects these places. You know, Australia has a multicultural bunch of people now, nationalities,
mm-hmm.
Which I think it's got to affect the image and the original heritage of these places. So the heritages are changing.
Mm-hmm.
India, still pretty much the same. Massive middle class and a massive poor class.
Mm-hmm.
But a fascinating place to go to. We're going back to Bali. We went back there 2 years later and we were all covered up, the women. And they obviously wanted to promote tourism. And on that particular trip, I was 8 to 12, so we went ashore in a minibus to have a look round the paddy fields and what have you, and ended up in a shack of a bar, place where you keep your beer cold in the stream, that kind of place.
Mm.
And there was a sign in Pidgin English and Indonesian saying, any woman improperly dressed will be confiscated. So all the women are being told to cover up so they don't offend people, which to me is taken away
from what their culture actually was, because it was a big part of how they lived.
Yeah. And it's not a sexual thing. It's just
No.
Yeah.
And I think, like I say, I think in this day and age, people could look at a comment like that and think it's oh, they were topless. But it's the fact that a lot of countries had their own, like you say, culture, dress, and then when tourism and commercialism comes in, you start to augment that because you want to bring people in and not offend them, which I completely agree is backwards.
Yeah.
Because we have moved into and I want to ask you about this, because we have moved into a sort of realm where tourism has changed, the ability to go and have an adventure has changed because everything is being curated to bring you in instead of you going in and discovering it. Is that something you would agree with or disagree
absolutely.
with?
It's good to get outside your comfort zone when you go to places. Because I was working in China, I got to experience that. I was in a place called Zhoushan, which is about 4 hours out of Shanghai. And they have a lot of little shipyards dotted around that area. And there's one called Ant Island. And we were surveying a ship that was being built out there. So I got the bus to Zhoushan and stayed at the Hilton Hotel. And then I had to get a ferry across to this island. So I got the girl at the reception to write out various sentences in Mandarin, like to the taxi, take me to the ferry station, then the ferry, take me to Ant Island, that kind of thing. But I'm the only white person. No one speaks English. Then you get out to the island, and it's like stepping back in time, 100 years. They don't have taxis, they have rickshaws made out of pram wheels. It's bizarre. And then you get to the shipyard, and then you make your way back. And then coming back, I get a taxi to take me to the Hilton. And he pulls out of the ferry terminal. And then someone else gets in the taxi. So you think, hey, what's going on here? But it was actually a girl, she spoke English. But it's quite normal for people to share taxis in that town. But otherwise, people have organised tours. They get directed where to go as opposed to finding your own way. When I was at sea, we didn't have sat-nav or anything. You just go ashore and you make your own way around the town. You just follow your nose and come back.
And how do you think that sort of has shaped you as a person? Because at 73, like there's probably, we're all going to live to 100, you know what I mean? So it's 27 years to go.
Yeah.
But how do you think that shapes you as a person, that sense of adventure? And
it makes you independent. It makes you, the expression worldly wise. You see lots of things when you travel. You see lots of good ideas. You see business opportunities. Going back to the early days of Hong Kong, I used to buy oil paintings on canvas. This is like 1975, 76. And you'd buy an oil painting on canvas for like $2 in Hong Kong. So I used to buy 50 of them, and then I'd sell them when I went back to UK for like 50 quid each. And in those days, people bought prints. No one ever had an original oil painting. So, yeah, a bit of an entrepreneurial side then.
And plus, when you get gifts or you see artifacts from, again, the world is very small these days.
Yeah.
If I want to buy something from China, I can go onto Amazon and order it,
Yep.
and within about a week it's there. And if I want to pay more money, it will come the next day.
Absolutely.
Whereas you go back to the 70s, 80s, and I suppose even a big part of the 90s, China might as well have been the moon for the amount of distance it was.
Yeah, and you had to actually go there to get the stuff out. Yeah.
That's very interesting. What is it you're doing now then? Because you finished on the QE2 90. You finished 1990, is that right?
With Cunard, yeah.
Cunard.
Yeah.
And then sorry, continue.
No, and then 2007 to 2009 here. And then after that, I'd been doing real estate in America. and that had gone through a bit of a crash. So I spent a year looking at getting the QE2 into London. Then when that was squashed, I got back into my previous business, which was hazardous materials on ships. And that's when I started working with a Chinese company. And then 2017, I started my own company in Hong Kong. And then in 2020, we started a marine business supporting air quality on ships to help them kill bacteria and viruses. And
you do water treatment as well, is that right?
We do. We advise them on Legionella prevention, and I'm an expert witness on Legionella cases on cruise ships.
And Legionella is?
Legionella, and I've actually had it. It's an airborne moisture bacteria. It's not a virus, it's bacteria. And you get it in showers. And I always advise people, whenever you go into a hotel, no matter where it is, always run the shower for 5 minutes on hot and 5 minutes on cold before you get in it. Because when water is stagnant, say for 5 to 7 days, Legionella can develop in the water, and as soon as you put the shower on, it comes out. But I know all about this because I'd done courses, but more importantly, when I first went to China in 2012, it was January, and the hotel had been empty for 2 weeks. I took a shower, and within 12 hours, I got what I thought was flu.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a form of Legionella called Pontiac, which is like a 5-day flu. So that's how I know about flushing showers.
And what made you become passionate about these two things, the asbestos, the air quality, and the water?
It's all to do with ships. So you're improving the situation for the crew. And bearing in mind, my seagoing time in engine rooms on a steamship, it was all asbestos. Luckily, touch wood, I haven't had it yet.
And so you're sort of fighting the good fight on improving the conditions.
Conditions for anyone sailing on ships, including passengers. Normally the cruise lines, their ships are most probably the cleanest hotels. But unfortunately, because of the lack of training, sometimes they don't, or they're not aware of the consequences of some of their actions. Like at the moment, people are energy saving. So I've just had 2 ships where they let the chilled water go above 30 degrees, and it's supposed to be kept below 25. And that's allowed biofilms to establish in the water system. And if you don't flush the lines, Legionella bacteria forms in the pipes.
So how many of this sort of thing is, let's say, preventable?
Yeah.
Is it due to cost cutting, negligence, like you said, energy saving?
Well, you're saving on the chillers for the chilled water.
Okay.
So they weren't running them. So they're saving electricity there. They also lower the temperature of the hot water. They have it at 60 at the distribution point, but by the time it gets around the ship, there's areas where it's below 50. And again, that's another area where Legionella can form.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So it's like being a detective. You have to get as much information as you can, sift through it, and then build up the evidence.
No, to be honest with you, I think it's great that you sort of had that very sort of eclectic lifestyle, around the world, seeing the world, been through many, many different situations, and tried to buy the QE2 and everything like that, and sort of later on focusing on making sure that the quality that everyone's actually experiencing is as good as it can be.
Yeah. But also, getting back to the beginning, I mean, isn't it great to be paid to travel?
Do you think people don't know how good that actually is now?
Travel? Yeah.
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 We spoke about this.
Well, I always say, how do you describe what life is? A good example is life is a series of experiences. So the more experiences you have, the more you've lived. I used to fly Concorde quite a lot because there was a Concorde QE2 connection.
Mm.
I got to know some of the pilots because they used to come on doing lectures about the plane. And the first time I flew it, I was on leave, and the senior captain phoned me up. He said, "What are you doing on Thursday?" I said, "Not too much." He says, "Do you want to come to Miami with us on the plane as part of the flight crew?" So I thought about it and said, yeah, okay, I'll come.
Yeah.
So
why not?
it goes by Washington. So yeah, I'm on the flight deck for the whole flight, apart from nipping back for a bit of dinner. So it lands in Washington. It's there for 2 hours to pick up and drop off people before going to Miami. So I had my picture taken with the stewardesses on the wing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how many people have their picture taken on a wing of a plane, let alone
Especially Concorde, yeah.
Yeah. So, things like that.
You've met the Queen Mother?
The Queen Mother after the Falklands, yeah.
Yeah.
I was always on leave when the Queen came down, but the Queen only came down 3 times in the life of the ship.
How was the Queen Mother?
Fine, very sociable.
Fine.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I really like the way that things that to me seem, and this is why I love doing the podcast, and I love having the different guests that I actually have, because to me things seem so like a wow factor, you know. And I think I shook Prince Charles's hand once, a long time ago, when he was doing. He used to do his working with children and stuff like that. I was actually a waiter at one of his events, and he came down and shook my hand. But in comparison to being on the QE2 and meeting the Queen Mother, and
Yeah, but there was
it's all kind of like
well, yeah,
within the day, you know.
Well, you have to remember we had famous people on. George C. Scott, Ben Kingsley. Ben Kingsley used to come on and do lectures about films. And when I first went chief in '84, the cruise director called me and says, "Can Ben Kingsley come down and have a look at the engine room?" So I said no, because it was a bit of a mess, wasn't very clean. 85, can Ben Kingsley come down? I said no. Anyway, 86, we were going for re-engineering. And the company actually said if the condition of the ship was the same in 1984 as it was in 86, they would have rethought the re-engineering process.
Yeah.
But, so I let Ben come down, and then we met up for a drink in the Queen's Grill that night. Nice chap. But there was others, Rod Stewart, Elton John.
I think Nelson Mandela as well, wasn't
Oh,
there?
Nelson Mandela, yeah, that's... it was unfortunate that Dubai decided to make the big suite room that he stayed in a storage area for towels and sheets.
It's hotels.
Yeah.
It's what hotels do. I love hotels. They're great.
Yeah.
But they're very... I don't know how many people build a hotel with the amount of storage that they actually need in mind. So before you know it, all kinds of rooms have been drummed up, allocated. Yeah, there's a hotel term if I ever heard one.
Yeah.
You know that I'd like to ask mature people, as I like to refer to people of your age, what they feel about life now and let's say the younger generation coming through, because it is such a polarizing topic at the moment, where the younger, as we like to call them, the Gen Zs, don't really understand the Xs. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
At my age, let alone people even further sort of advanced in their life. I'm a big fan of simple statements like you don't really argue with experience, because you don't. If you want to ask somebody how to do something, if someone's done it for 20 years and someone's done it for a year.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to ask, just general worldview, because I've had a great time with the conversation. You've been fantastic, and believe it or not, the hour is almost done. So I did want to ask, just general worldview,
I feel disappointed and concerned for the younger generation, the kids that are in 10, 11 at the moment, what the next 10 years is going to be like for them, what they're going to do. In light of AI, and I only started using AI in the last couple of months, and I just find it totally amazing, but at the same time concerning. It will do away with most probably 50% of people's jobs. So what's going to happen to them? What profession do you get into to secure a career? But I think careers have changed now. 50 years ago, you were in one job and you stayed there for the rest of your life. I think that's gone now, which I've proven for myself. You do different things. No, it's concerning. And I don't know enough about AI. It just blows my mind how quick it can come back with something. And I'm just one of a million people using it at any one time. So God knows what's further down the line.
And I think, as you said earlier, you started off writing handwritten letters.
Yeah, when we were at sea. And I remember we actually had internet in 1984.
Okay.
And when I took over as chief, we had satellite TV being tested out. And ironically, they used my cabin to test the satellite TV. So I was the only one who had satellite TV. And I'd be in the middle of the Atlantic and I'd be watching National Geographic about Ballard diving down on the Titanic. I'm looking at the Titanic. Then I realised we're actually sailing over it as I'm watching it. Yeah, kind of weird. But getting back to internet, yeah. So what we used to do, we'd type out our emails. When I say I type out, I had a secretary would type them out. I would either dictate or write something, and she'd type. Because people didn't type in those days. And
they barely type now, probably.
And then they'd use a data dump twice a day to head office to get all the messages back to Cunard. So that was in 1984. But yeah, I think even when I first came here in 2007, I used to dictate or write letters for the secretary to type up. And then I started typing myself then, and that's it. Yeah.
And so I think, another thing we briefly discussed, you and I share, we have something in common where we left school and we went straight to work, And how much value do you think that has had on you specifically over your career, where you just got out there and started making stuff happen?
No, very, very much. I think it's important. I think the youngsters today, the teenagers, don't automatically have that. They think about going to university and they're tied up until about 22, 23 before they actually look for a job. And, up until a few years ago, maybe that was okay, but it's going to be even worse now with AI. You can have these people who spent several years at university in a particular subject, and it's going to be wasted.
That's bad. Yeah, I totally agree with that. People can be studying, especially in the, as they refer to in America, the white collar jobs.
Imagine being a lawyer.
Yeah, accountant.
A lawyer reviews contracts. A lawyer makes contracts up. AI can do it in seconds. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the one that hits home is and I'm probably going to mess up the pronunciation, an anaesthetist. So an anaesthetist is the highest paid medical job in the States, and it's where you put you create the dosages to knock people out. Now, I've probably got that way off from the what it really is, but it's in that ballpark. Yeah. And obviously because it's so intricate and you get paid a lot of money to do it, and it's extremely important, and if you don't get it right, you could cause a lot of damage. And they think that AI will just go, done. Yeah. And that kind of shows, like you say, how much the world could change coming up. But this has been a fascinating 55 minutes or so. I've had a great time.
Yeah, thanks. Me too. Yeah.
And one thing I always ask all the guests, and I think it's very, very important with someone like yourself who, like I've already said, has travelled the world, has seen so many changes, has been in some incredibly stressful situations, and work-wise has been in, I suppose, very stressful, highly responsible positions. You've tried to buy a ship, you've moved into you've moved into purifying air, water, duty of care towards passengers and staff alike in the industry that you've had your entire career. What would be the one thing, if you could only say one thing, what would be the one piece of advice that you would hand over to anybody coming through the ranks?
I think if you want to succeed, you need to find something that you've got a passion for. You need to have confidence, a positive attitude to achieve what you want to achieve. You've obviously got to have a goal, and then you figure out the way to get there. And I think that will apply even with AI. Yeah.
Fantastic.
And be confident if you can.
If you can. Yeah. Well, John Chillingworth, thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you.
It's been fantastic, and all the best.
Yeah, cheers.
No worries.
You can come down to the ship again if you want.
I will.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. I've got a couple of young kids under the age of 5 that will love to come and see that thing.
Yeah, great.
I'll bring them down.
Look forward to it.
Thank you.